Hey, everybody. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight for another Facebook Live. We're here tonight with Justin and Lauren Arnold. Justin serves as one of our ministers on staff, oversees our counseling and family ministries. And so excited to have them on. Hey, do us a favor. If you would share this with your friends and followers, we want to get as many people on here as possible. Also, I'll be reminding you throughout our time together to submit questions, share this. We want to have a lot of interaction tonight. So whatever questions you have for us tonight's topic, we're going to be talking about conflict resolution and then sex and sexuality. If you guys know, a couple of weeks ago, we did a series on sex and sexuality. A lot of questions even last week on that subject. And we want to be able to answer more questions. Again, I'll give you more parameters on that in just a little bit. But we also want to talk about this last week's sermon as well, this topic of fighting fair, conflict resolution, how to communicate well when we're having a disagreement, or if we're just really honest, Justin, when we're fighting. So that's the reality. So here's the deal. Justin, Lauren, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Want to give it an opportunity for you guys just to tell a little bit about your family, a little bit about your relationship, how long you guys have been married, a little about your kids. So introduce us to the Arnolds.
You want to start?
Sure. We're Justin and Lauren Arnold. We've been married 20 years this past January. So that was a big one. We have 3 kids, a 14-year-old boy, 12-year-old boy, and 6-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And you guys got back from a tennis
Well, I
tournament?
did. Lauren was at work. I went to support the kiddo.
All right.
Andy plays tennis at Hallsville, and so they were in by district today.
Dominates at Hallsville. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, Andy's he's fun to watch. He's a good little player.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, listen, we've been talking about the series, the FORTIFY series we've been in, and we've got a lot of traction. People seem to be engaged in this. And, Justin, you and I have a chance to talk a lot about the content in it. I would love to hear from you guys. This is a married couple. It's a family in our church. What are a couple of the favorite moments of the series, maybe a takeaway or two that has been an encouragement to you guys?
It's hard for me to pick because I feel like the series has been good. I think really talking about men, whenever you preached on just kind of the role of men and who we are, that was challenging for me. It's like I knew what was coming, but it was still like a little bit of a gut punch of like, wake up, what are we doing with our time, So that was really good for me. Seeing the visualization on the stage this past week of everything that can come between us, it's like I do this and I do counseling and I see it with couples and I'm always forced to think about what that looks like between me and Lauren. But just seeing it visually represented was like, man, this drift that can happen between us is so prevalent. And if we're not super intentional, everything else will begin to take place of really who we're supposed to be together.
Yeah,
and I loved, of course, the talk to the women, and specifically, you said that the word for helper, I will find you a helper suitable, is azir, and how that New Testament equivalent would be paraclete, the word for the Holy Spirit, and just that denotes strength. It's not a less than role, but it's somebody bringing strength to the table.
Yeah.
So I really liked that, and I appreciate you doing this sermon series.
Yeah, it's been a fun series, and it's been amazing just the conversations that we've had. I know, Justin, there's been a lot of conversation with couples the last several weeks coming from this. And one of the things I love, Justin, a little bit about your background in counseling. You've counseled teens who have been through trauma for a number of years, and along with their families, navigating them through this. And I know, Lauren, you're invested in his ministry as well from counseling. I know you guys both mentor couples and you pour into women. Talk to us a little bit about, just some of the things you guys have experienced in that and what your passion is as far as family goes.
Yeah, I'll start this one. My passion is for the nuclear family. I think as believers, our first calling is to our family,
Yeah.
and like that's our biggest mission field. Um, and I think why I feel so strongly about it is even though I was working in a parachurch ministry, I really allowed my first ministry to be work in other families
Mhm.
for a long time and didn't realize how much I was leaving just hanging, my kids hanging, my wife hanging, and um, coming to realize that, wait a minute, I'm being disobedient. Even though I'm doing good things, I'm being disobedient to care for my nuclear family. That was pretty overwhelming. So,
Yeah.
um, but that's been driven as I've been able to teach that to parents and teach that even to kids of just the importance of how we walk together, how we understand one another, that, as we talk to our kids, they don't talk and they don't think like us.
Yeah.
They don't have the same capacity of understanding or processing or communication
Yeah.
that we do. And sometimes if we're not careful, we spend time doing that. We
Yeah.
talk to them and expect them to respond and understand as adults. And so I get passionate about helping families learn
Yeah.
how to navigate that and how to do it differently.
Well, that's so critical. And then to have, I know, Lauren, you and Adrian both have a passion for the family and pour into women in our community, and it's a gift, to us. But also, it's a way for you guys to take the things that God is teaching you and you're learning and growing and share that with other people. Listen, I'm going to again just say thank you for joining us tonight. We are with Justin and Lauren Arnold. Adrian and I want to have a conversation with them about the series that we've been in. We're going to be talking about two big topics tonight. We're going to have sex and sexuality, and then we're going to be talking about conflict, how to fight fair. The last week's sermon this past Sunday was dealing with conflict, and we would love for you to share this with others. We're going to give a little more time for people to get on.
Excuse me.
So share this with your friends. We also want you to submit questions. So if you have a question in regards to sex and sexuality, it can be anything from how to manage the health of that in your marriage. It could be how to fight for purity. It could be having conversations with your kids, how to navigate them through transitional seasons of life. Maybe even walking kids or family members that might be confused about their sexuality. We want to make sure that nothing's off the table. You guys can ask any questions you want. Can't promise you that we're going to have the answer for it, but we'll try the best we can. And also, we're going to be talking about fighting fair, communication within our relationships. We want to encourage you, ask away any question you want. And anything that Justin and I don't have an answer for,
Lauren's got.
Lauren's got. Okay, that's right. That's right. So we're glad that you guys are here. So let me just start with this, Justin. Lauren, when it comes to this area of sex and sexuality, Justin, I want to talk about this with you. One of the things that we as men recognize is that fighting for our purity and fighting for holiness is an important thing. What are some things that you've done in your life just to build? We talked about you're either going to be building parameters that'll lead to freedom, or you're building prisons that are going to lead to captivity. What are some ways that you've built parameters that have helped you walk in freedom in this area?
Yeah, just, basically, I mean, what we've done is me and Lauren are just gonna choose to be open with one another. And so in a married relationship, anytime there's struggle, that we can talk about it. And Lauren doesn't expect me to be perfect. She knows that I'm a sinful person. And so whenever I'm caught in sin, it's not about her, it's about us, and it's about us being deceived and being drawn away from who we are in Christ and divided as a couple. And so just communication is probably the biggest and best thing that we have learned to do, is just be open with each other. Secondly, things like just software, finding software that works. But I'll be honest with you that I have counseled a ton of people in this realm, and if you don't want it to work, it's not going to. Like you will find a way around any kind of software, anything else. You can find it if you want to find it. Um, but making it hard for yourself, if that's a struggle, is helpful. I think the third thing I would say is accountability is key. If you don't have other men in your life that can
That's
hold
right.
you accountable, you are missing out on what we're called to as believers, which is to walk in community together.
Yeah.
My number one accountability partner is going to be my wife. I love it that whenever I'm fearful that I could potentially struggle, that I can talk to her about it, and
Yeah.
we can ask if I am out of town and the person who's supposed to go with me bails on the last minute. We can make a plan for how we're going to talk and when we're going to talk and what the accountability questions are going to be. And it draws us together. It causes her to pray for where my weakness really is felt. But I also get to feel loved by my wife in the midst of it,
Yeah.
and she gets to feel loved by me as I am vulnerable with her. So those are the things I think are really important: is accountability, and then and doing the things that make it hard on you. So like if you happen to be a guy or gal that's struggling in the realm of pornography or purity in some form, I would just say, hey, figure out what it is that you tend to struggle with most and get rid of it. That we
Mm,
take our sin super serious, that
yeah.
nothing's off the table. Like if it's your phone, get a flip phone, get a kid's gab phone, whatever you've got to do to be able to continue to communicate with people, but not have access to it. If
Yeah.
it's your
That's really good.
computer, put software on it, have other people
Yeah.
that can help monitor that with you. Um, but whatever you do, commit to it and commit to
Yeah.
it with other people, and make sure you're talking about what you're committing to with other people. What you leave in the darkness, man, will eat you alive.
That's right.
But what you bring into the light and you get used to talking about becomes so, so, so helpful. I always
Yeah.
kind of describe it with guys that I'm working with or I'm talking to. It's kind of like if if I was going to live or I was going to do life and I'm living in this dark house with no lights, it's pitch black, I can't see anything, and all I can hear is this dog just growling and barking at me.
Mm,
What does that bring up in me? It brings up fear. I'm willing to do anything to get out of that because I don't know whether I'm safe.
yeah.
But a lot of times, if we just flip on the lights, we realize it's just a chihuahua and it's in a kennel. And ultimately, there's a door over here. I don't even have to stay in this place. It's like
Yeah.
what we bring into the light, we really
Yeah.
get to see for what it really is. And so I think that accountability piece is probably more important than anything else you can do. But take sin serious.
Yeah.
Jesus talks about it like, hey, if your eye caused you to sin, cut it out.
Yeah.
Cut your hand off. Like, the point is, get rid of the things in your life that are controlling you.
Man, it's so good. And I think the openness with the spouse, I think one of the things that a breakthrough for us years ago is when, I was honest with her just about here's where I struggle,
Yeah.
and this is, what I battle in regards to purity. And for her then to create, safe space for um, me to be honest about that. It was like literally just liberating and freeing. And it was almost like the battle got easier because I wasn't in that alone.
Well, and I loved what you said, Justin, about that brings you closer together. It's odd how that happens, but when it's brought up and then you're not met with shame or judgment, but love and
Good.
understanding and wanting to help and head that off. It's so cool how God can take something, that some people would say, oh, I could never, that would be awful for us. But for us, it really brings us closer together because we're fighting together for
That's
that
right.
purity. And so it is that intimacy. It's another way to be more intimate. And I want to know those struggles, but it's so pivotal to not feel shame or judgment, but to feel love and security in that moment.
Yeah, I think that's important
Mhm.
there. I think the
Absolutely.
men, if I'm honest, like speaking from a man, men are afraid to say that kind of struggle to their spouse because they're afraid that it's going to be either they're going to be shamed by it, or it's going to feel like some reason, I'm rejecting you by saying I struggle
Yeah, you
with an
can't take it
area.
personally.
Right. And Lauren, so what would you say to, maybe a wife out there who's wants to create more of an environment where their husband can be more open? What are a couple of things from a woman's perspective that you would say to another woman out there?
I would say the Holy Spirit is absolutely essential in this process, because if you're not walking with the Lord, you are not going to be able to meet that honesty with love and with
Mhm.
grace and with forgiveness. So I just can't stress how important it is for individually to be walking with the Lord and to be in tune with that Holy Spirit. so that you can meet that openness, that vulnerability with love. Like, let me help you. Like, how can I help you? How can I be a part of the solution? And like you said last Sunday, you want your spouse to succeed. And, you know, that comes from love. We want, you know, we should want them to succeed. We don't want them to stumble. We want them to succeed. So how can I help you in that process?
That's so good. Being sensitive to the Holy Spirit. So, and let me ask this, and before I do, let me just say, hey, if you're watching, thanks for joining us tonight. I know you could be doing a lot of things on a what's tonight? Tuesday night? Okay, Tuesday night. But you're choosing to hang out with us. Hey, listen, share this, submit questions. We're on here with Justin and Lauren Arnold, just talking about sex and sexuality, talking about conflict within marriage or just relationships in general. So we're covering questions from how to communicate with our children about sex and sexuality, how to deal with family members that are confused, how to manage a healthy sex life, how to walk in purity. So submit those questions. When it comes to conflict, nothing's off the table. We want to be able to help you navigate any questions that you might have. So we're talking for a moment about walking in purity. Now, one of the things that I know, and I'll get both of y'all to say something about this, but we live busy lives. I mean, you wives are super busy with careers, jobs, responsibilities, plus kids and schedules, and you know, so many things. But so, how have you come to the place in your life and marriage where you prioritize not just a healthy relationship, but a healthy sex life within the marriage? Like, what are some things that have led you to the place where you go, man, I want to be more intentional. I want to be fully engaged in every way, even though we know that life is busy and that could be a challenge. So what are some things you guys would say to wives out there?
Yeah, I would say for us, the communication is just so pivotal. Pivotal. The more we talk about it, and the more we share openly and share our needs and share, you know, just our desires in that area, the more we're on the same page. And then, frankly, I mean, it's the more time we can plan for that, you know. And so the being very intentional to look at a week and see how busy you are, and then, you know, look at the calendar and say, okay, but this is going to be time for us, and this is going to be time that we put the kids to bed earlier. This is going to be time that we put our relationship first. And I think not being scared to realize that, you know, we're going to schedule all our coffee dates, we're going to schedule all the things that we have for the kids, but intimate time can be scheduled, and we don't make any bones about that. That's something that we feel very strongly about, and that is putting your relationship as a priority, but knowing the other's feelings on the subject and communication, it just really has opened the door to a much more healthy relationship.
And one of the things I think with you've helped our family build rhythms.
Absolutely.
Where there's space for you and me.
Right.
And it's not just managing and then trying to find, you know, what works. And if it, you know, if that part of our life happens, it happens. But you've done a great job of helping us develop rhythms to where our whole life is healthy, not just a few things. So,
and the whole life doesn't revolve around the kids. I think that is so.
Yes. Yes and amen. So Lauren, what about you guys? What would you say?
Yeah, I echo Adrian's, you know, words, and yeah, I mean, sometimes it's not very romantic, but sometimes you really do have to like plan it and schedule it and
I disagree. I think it was romantic the whole time.
Didn't take a lot.
And yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm a planner, so I like to, like you said, look at a week, and sometimes I'm thinking, you know what, really, there is no other night except for tonight, and so I'm, you know, texting Justin like, hey, it's got to be tonight, so. You know, just have to be intentional about it and schedule it. So
yeah, no, and I think that's so good. And you know, managing, we do this in every other part of our life. We don't, you know, we don't let other parts of our life just kind of happen when they happen. And like you said a second ago, so it may not be as romantic, but I think I would much rather have healthy rhythms than just think there always has to be spontaneity or a high level of romance, because at the end of the day, when you're connecting with your spouse in every aspect, through emotionally, communication, with the rest of the family, and then sexually, that's way healthier than just having romance and things like that. And I think that's where a lot of families miss it. The other thing is this: you said something a second ago, and I want to say to all the young families out there with young kids, put your babies in their own bed. put your babies in their own bed. Listen, I hear this all the time, and this is one of the things that we had some people ahead of us when we had younger kids that said, look, you need to treat the bedroom sacred, and that's y'all's space and place. And we understand that there are going to be certain maybe short, brief seasons, or there may be circumstances where that sacred space is interrupted. But if you've got kids that they're just in the rhythm of sleeping in your bed, and you said this is just easier, it might be easier, but it's going to take a toll on your marriage before too long, if you don't fix that. So that was one of the things that we were taught at a young age, and it was so beneficial for us to realize it was okay to say we're going to put each other in this above the kids.
John,
right,
I think
go
we're
ahead.
sorry to just kind of jump in here. This is something that I get to talk about a lot with couples, because, like I think sexuality and where the husband and wife feel comfortable is akin to just as hard as talking about money, because we're so emotionally wrapped up in both of them. And I don't think that sometimes we realize how much trauma, how much our past, the way we grew up, the way our parents allowed us to talk about it, didn't talk about it, what we've done with our lives, those things, it can play into expectations or lack of expectations or shame that controls whether we are willing to be open and honest or know how to. And ultimately, like that always gets in the way. And so I would just challenge couples to, if you are that and you do struggle to talk about sex and sexuality because it's awkward, or I don't know what to say, or I feel like I'm going to be rejected because, man, so many people don't talk about it because of the fear of rejection.
Yep.
I just want to encourage you to take a step of vulnerability with the person that you say, I love this person more than anyone else on earth. And whenever we begin to say that, and we begin to say, hey, look, I've got to talk to you about this, because if we're not on the same page, this is a foothold that the enemy is going to use to divide us. And so I don't want to just talk about it like it's easy, just do it, because I know there's so much emotion that gets in the way of doing it. And so I just want to encourage you that, hey, when you do feel that, it doesn't mean you're crazy and it doesn't mean you're bad. It means you're human. And as a human, trust the Lord that you can talk to this person that you've covenanted forever with.
Yeah.
And you can do this because they're just as awkward and just as weirded out by saying what they think and feel too. And the more that you begin to practice that level of vulnerability together, the closer that you guys will be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, one of the things that we've learned through the years, the more we can be honest about, even when it comes to, frequency and things, that areas of our life where we're feeling either our needs aren't being met or maybe emotional disconnect, the more we actually talk about that, it doesn't just help the sexual side of a relationship. It like helps every area, every part of our relationship. We're more united in that.
But I think too, like when you talk about it, what we found more recently in maybe the past 10 years is talk about it, but then make a plan to fix it, you know? And so I remember last year we were just going through a very hectic time of year with the kids, and it was just we were just coming and going in the night, it felt like, and we finally had just a really good conversation. And what we decided is we've got to get out of town. We've got to pick up, we've got to go, we've got to get a few nights away. And we came back recharged and re-engaged and a new couple, just because we realized, like, we talked about in the sermon this week, our face-to-face time was not happening. And so sometimes for us, because our life is so crazy, which I know everybody out there feels the same way, it was actually getting away and unplugging and totally reconnecting, and so that if you're going to spend money, spend it on your relationship and invest in that.
Yeah. And I love what Eva, who, by the way, they're celebrating 40 years of marriage. So a lot more experience managing a relationship. Here's what they submitted. Said, I believe it's important for couples to remember that our children are only temporary residents in our homes. One day they'll move on, but our spouse will remain. Next to God, nothing should be valued more than your marriage. Also, kids don't need to be in every sport or activity. Make your spouse your priority. I needed that when I was preaching this series a couple weeks ago. I would have
Yeah.
quoted you from the stage. That is so good. Thank you for that. I also saw that the Mays are joining us from Albuquerque, New Mexico, who have been married 47 years. And man, the wealth of knowledge and wisdom that they have, a huge encouragement to Adrian and I. But here's the thing. We're talking about sex and sexuality. We're talking about conflict and dealing with the stress and strife within relationships. Encourage you submit questions, comments. Want to talk about the questions that you might have in those areas. Justin, one of the things that I wanted you to talk about, and really both of you, but I know part of what you've done in the past is you've walked kids that have been through traumatic experience, and oftentimes it was because of sexual abuse or some sort of abuse. What are some things that parents can do to be more intentional about preparing their kid, not just for the transition of their body and their understanding of sex and sexuality, but also guarding them and putting protection to prevent abuse? What are some things families can do to protect their kids?
Yeah, I think the greatest thing that you can offer your kids is a healthy relationship with them.
Yeah.
The greatest thing that you can offer your kids is a healthy relationship, because without that, everything's going to go in one ear and out the other, and talking is going to be hard. And so I would challenge every family to not become a parent, like just a peer that happens to be a parent, but to be a parent. But being a parent means that I am walking in true community and fellowship with my kids. And so that means we're talking, and we're doing things together. We're enjoying things together. It's not just, things that occupy their time, but things that we both enjoyed that bring us together. I think that becomes number one, because without the relationship, there is an influence. And so we just need to know that you can ground them all you want, but that will just teach them to hate if there's no relationship. And so I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is you can't start too early. You can start talking to babies about their bodies and what's okay and what's not okay and what this is and what it's not, and teaching them, their body parts, and even from there, what's okay for people who can see this, who can't, all the way up to, having actual talks about, I think age appropriate talks, but I mean, if we know right now that the average age that children are introduced to pornography is right about at the age of 9,
Mm.
that means we're really way too late if we haven't started having some basic conversation before that. And so conversation is going to be key. There's lots of resources out there that can be Googled that are helpful. That can be really helpful. I would just, if you just want one book, I would tell you the Mama Bear Apologetics books are
So
really,
good.
really good. And it's all packed into one little book, but they have other resources. And if y'all want that, feel free, y'all can email me and I can send you a list of resources. But we have series of books that start with newborns all the way up to having a full talk of sending some kid out of your house at 18,
Yeah.
that kind of walk you through it and process where they are. But I think that's helpful. Um, I think the third thing I would say is, if we are going to talk and we're going to provide resources for, parents of what they need to be talking about, I think the second thing then is you got to protect your kids online. And your kids don't need access to everything. They don't need access to all the social media. They don't need access to the Safari if you have an iPhone, or Google Chrome or whatever it is that's just unfiltered, or just have free access to YouTube. I mean, the amount of stuff on there, or free access to Disney Plus or Netflix or all those things. You know, all of them can be password protected. Like,
Yeah.
I've got my kids, my two boys, 14 and 12, fixing to be 13 and 15. They've had iPhones for a couple of years, but they don't have, I mean, they are always frustrated because school will ask them to do something online. And it's like,
QR
sorry, we
code
don't
can't
have
do it.
online on our phone, like we can't do that. And so, I mean, it's always that awkward thing, but it's like, I don't care if your
Yep.
teachers think we're crazy.
Mhm.
They don't have social media. It's just not something that we're gonna do. And the apps that we do allow them to have, they're super structured and they're all protected. And, like I know what's going on. I will never, ever, ever apologize to my child about taking their phone and just saying, "Hey, I want to read through your messages.
That's
I
right.
want to know what's going on. I want to see what which my kids, they can't download an app without our approval. They can't delete an app without our approval. I mean, my 14 fixing my high school student, Andy, um, here in about 56 minutes, his phone's cut off. And at 9 o'clock on school nights, no texting, no, it can't do anything on. And
Yeah.
we just made that a priority because I'm not trying to call them to be happy about my rule. I'm trying to create a measure of safety that says
Yeah.
like, hey, we love you. We love you. And where I don't believe you are mature enough to have the internal control to say no, I'm going to provide the external controls for you.
Yeah.
And,
And
as they get older, we're going to give them more freedom.
yep.
We're going to give them more freedom and they're going to fail and we're going to get to talk through it and process it. But as far as as far as purity goes, I think the number one thing we can do is be honest and talk about it. Even as awkward as it is. And if you talk to any family that's had the sex talk with their kids, you always get the funny stories of what their kids said or what they thought. And I could share it, but it's probably not G-rated for this environment with talking to my kids. But it's so funny, it's awkward, it's weird, but if you start that process early, it really isn't that awkward and it isn't
No,
that hard.
and I think, Justin, I think men stepping up, especially if you have sons
Mhm.
and being engaged in that conversation young, and then even the men being somewhat involved with their daughters from the standpoint of, um, we don't want to create an environment where sex and sexuality is weird.
Yeah.
From the standpoint of, dad can't be a part of the dating, process.
Mhm.
We have this kind of idea of mom handles the girls, dad handles the boys. And I think for a lot of the conversation, that's probably good. But then there's also aspects of fathers needing to affirm their daughters that the transitions that they're going through, um, um, shouldn't put a distance and disconnect, between the affection that they have, with their father. But one of the things that we did with our kids was we tried to be the first to have the conversation,
Yeah.
and that started
So
when they were
important.
young, we talked about the bathing suit rule, that, you know, the things that a bathing suit cover up, that's part of your body that no one, um, you know, can look at, touch, interact with, and teaching them at a young age that those are sacred spaces that God's given them. And that if they've ever felt that they've been violated, that they need to immediately come and talk to us about it and that they're not in trouble. I think giving them freedom to be able to come and have conversation, even if it makes them feel embarrassed, that and one of the things we would always say to them is that if someone ever does something to you and you're scared to tell us about it, it probably means you need to.
Yeah.
And just creating, if you feel this, that's probably an indicator that we need to have a conversation.
If anybody's
Um,
telling you that you can't share it,
that's right.
you
That's
have
right.
to. Yeah.
Well, and just empowering your kids, especially, I would talk to the girls about, God has given you wisdom and discernment. And if something just feels off, go with that. Even if we find out it was a-okay and we overreacted or whatever, but head off that situation and then come talk to us. Because I do remember specifically with one of our kids, there was a situation and it just didn't feel right. And when they came home and talked to me about it, I said, I totally agree with you. That did not feel right. You don't need to be in a room alone with, all the things. And I truly believe that was the Holy Spirit, that gave the kiddo that feeling,
That's right.
and protected her in that moment, and so to empower your kids that if you're a believer, you have the Holy Spirit, you have that wisdom and discernment that you need to listen to, and then
So
talk
important.
to us, tell us what happened so that we can, be fighting with you
Yeah.
and for you, and have that open door of communication, because they need to be talking to the parents. They don't need to be talking with their friends or their, people. If they want to get good information, it needs to come from home.
That's good.
When you start talking about these things where you're looking at potential, wanting to protect your kids from being abused in any kind of ways, whether that's physically, sexually, emotionally, spiritually, even, um, abuse the majority of time happens with somebody that you know.
That's right.
And so, people who will abuse, they are groomers. They're going to groom not just the kid, they're going to groom parents to think it's safe and everything's okay. And so, I would just tell parents, like, hey, just, yeah, look, there's not an abuser behind every tree, right? Like, I mean, and not everybody's coming after your kid to try to abuse them. However, be mindful of who
Yeah.
has access to your kid and when. It's like at the church, we practice something that I will never be alone in a room with another woman by myself unless there's a door open or cracked with another person sitting there or inside the room with me. Um, but even with our kids, it's like, hey, we don't want you and a kid by yourself anywhere where
Yeah.
you can't be seen. We're going to have, the multiples of two where we're always going to have kind of a group together to provide that sense of safety and security for the kids, but also for our leaders and our volunteers. And so the same needs to be true for parents. Like if you're sending your kids to places to go do stuff, whether it's lessons or whatever, um, who's there? What kind of
That's right.
involvement are they having with your kids? Like, just recognize that, people get into the types of businesses because they want to have access. Any kind of abuser wants to have access. And so
Yeah.
they're going to do things to provide themselves access. And so we've got to be the gatekeepers that say who gets access and who doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, and somebody pulled on Facebook, the point of sleepovers, that's something that, as parents, you've got to be really guarding, those times where you let your kid go spend the night at a house, and so if you're not able to have this conversation with the
Yeah.
parents of the kids that your kids are going to, then it's probably not a
Yeah.
safe space.
For us, it was, we put a lot of parameters around sleepovers. Our kids rarely did those growing up, just simply because of what you're talking about. Most of the time the abuser is someone that you're in a relationship with. And, so we just felt like it would be, best for us to limit the amount of sleepovers. We also, when our kids did go to parties or sleepovers, we would always give them an out. That Adrian had said, if something feels uncomfortable, we even said, hey, say that your stomach hurts and call us and we'll come pick you up. Um, send us a text. We'll come, we'll be there no matter what. And so I think that's important. The other thing is this, Justin, you kind of switching gears a little bit to just managing, one of the things that we've done as well with cell phones, Noah, we had his internet turned off until he went to college. My kids didn't have social media until they graduated from high school. And even now they manage it in a very different way than their peers, just because they've learned how to develop rhythms where they don't depend on it as much. But one of the things, and Jess, I don't know if you remember this, I think it was 12 or 13 years ago, you and I had coffee together at Starbucks, um, and you made the statement. You said, listen, it's not a matter of if your kids look at pornography or get exposed to it. It's a matter of what you're going to do as a parent and how you're going to respond. And I never, forgot that. And so I think it's equally important to cultivate an environment where failure isn't the end of the story, and creating safe spaces for your kids to fail toward you and not away from you.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that conversation, because it just kind of hit me of like, I better right now prepare myself for those moments where my kids fail, sexually, or they see something they shouldn't, or they look at something they shouldn't, or whatever. Because how I respond in that moment is going to tell them whether or not they can tell me the truth ever again.
Yeah.
So Lauren, talk about that for a minute from your perspective as a mom.
Yeah, that immediately, reminds me of a Paul David Tripp story where, his son really messed up and he wanted to go just nail him. And his wife, gently reminded him, remember, we're in the business of restoration, not demolition, and handling our kids delicately, because you're absolutely right. We might not get a second chance to redo that if we come at that at them guns a-blazing, to
Mhm.
right the wrong, they may never be honest with us again. And so just handling that so delicately and with grace, with softness, like Jesus does with our own sin, when we
That's
come to
right.
him. That's how we need to handle our kids, when they're honest and vulnerable with us. We need to approach them with that love and grace that we first received from Jesus.
Man,
Mhm.
that's so
Yeah.
good. We are in the restoration business, not the demolition business. Man, that's really good. Um, so let's do this. I want to switch gears for a minute, and I want to say to everybody joining in, hey, thanks for joining us, to spend a little time with us. We've been talking about sex and sexuality. We'll continue to take questions in that area if you want to submit those. There's been a lot of great comments and insight from you on here with your comments. Thank you for submitting those. I do want to shift gears for a moment and talk about conflict and talk about conflict resolution, fighting fair. We gave 5 rules of engagement this past week. Justin, you were my sounding board getting ready for that sermon. We talked for about 40 minutes in the parking lot on Thursday afternoon. But I want you to talk a little bit about just this idea of giving one another benefit of the doubt. We talked about when he says love believes all things. We talked about believing the best and not the worst in each other. How have you guys seen that both like practice in your marriage negatively and positively,
Yeah.
where you failed in this area and what you've learned from that and how it's helped you communicate better in disagreement?
Whenever me and Lauren were going through premarital counseling with our pastor and his wife, I don't even remember what we were talking about exactly, but I just remember Miss Susan just saying, "Hold up, this is something that I really need to know." And basically just talked about this idea that um, we, as we get married, we were created to be one. That we were becoming one flesh, no longer two separate entities, but one. And that one flesh represents the gospel. It is a picture, it's the greatest metaphor of the gospel on earth. And and what the enemy wants is to divide that, because the enemy does not want us to represent the gospel well in our marriage. And she just made a comment that the enemy is like, they're going to put this invisible film that goes between us, and we're going to say things to each other, and the other person is going to hear it after it's gone through the film, and it's going to be something that they never intended, or they're hearing something I never intended to say, or I'm hearing something that Lauren never intended to say. And if we don't ask the question of, hey, did you mean to make me feel, or are you trying to tell me blank, by giving them the benefit of the doubt,
Mm.
man, we're allowing the enemy to win, that he is going to deceive us. And when he deceives us, our heart will harden towards that belief, which then controls how we think, how we feel, and how we function. And so there comes a place for me and Lauren that we just committed, like day one when we were going through premarital. All right, we're going to give each other the benefit of the doubt. We're going to ask, hey, did you really make, and Lauren's a lot better at this than I am because I'm just ready to be defensive immediately. But Lauren's better at just saying, hey, when you said that, were you trying to make me feel like I'm the worst person on the planet, or that think I'm stupid, or whatever the issue is? And it's always like, no, why would you think that? Like, and it just gives us this chance to stop, pause, and say, okay, what was I really trying to do? What was I trying to
Yeah.
communicate? And let's start over. And it almost just takes the tool of the enemy, that immediate deceit, away from them. And then we get to determine, no, what I was really wanting to do is say blank.
Yeah.
Um, and so when we do that well, we don't fight. It's just like very quick of, oh my gosh, I missed your heart. Okay,
Yeah.
what you're asking for is help. Yes, I would love to help you.
Yeah.
When we don't do it well, Justin generally gets defensive and hides and covers, and then wants to mumble under his breath and blame everything else that's not me for why this is going on and why I never get the benefit of the doubt and blah blah
Yeah.
blah. And then we sit down and talk about it, and it's like, wait, what? Like neither one of us. Like, this is so stupid. Like what are we
Yeah.
doing here? Um, but that's general. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, so very practically speaking, this is how it would go. Justin might say something that offends me on some level. And so then I say, wait a second, when you said this, I heard that you think I'm a bad mom.
Hmm.
And
Mm.
we go from there. And he's able to say, that's not what I meant. I'm sorry. That was wrong. I'm trying to say this. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of practically kind of what it looks like to give somebody the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. No, I
Well, I mean,
like
the-
that. And so
well,
what you're doing in that is Lauren, you're communicating what you heard, and you're recognizing that might not be what he meant.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
really good.
So if we start with the premise that we love each other, I mean, I do this in premarital counseling. I'll just ask couples like, do you love her? Do you love him? And they'll say, well, yeah, of course. And then I'll ask the next question. Do you want to intentionally hurt her? Like, do you want her to hurt? Do you want her to feel your wrath and pain? And it's never yes, right? And vice versa for the woman. And it's like, okay, then when we feel like that person's trying to hurt me, maybe there's some deception happening. And how do we
Yeah.
give each other the benefit of the doubt that this person who loves me isn't trying to hurt me? Maybe I'm mishearing. Maybe he's misspeaking or she's misspeaking, whatever. But that's where I think the benefit of the doubt comes from is how do we choose that I know I'm loved, so I'm not going to respond as if I'm not.
No, that's good. And I use the analogy for us is, if Adrian's overwhelmed and she's been working all day and she's managing kids and she's cooking dinner and she comes in and the kids have left stuff around and she may make a statement, if I'm sitting there watching television, oblivious to the fact that she's frantically, trying to get stuff done. And I say, what's wrong? And she goes, well, I'm the only one that does everything around here. I'm just tired of it, which 90% of the time it's true. You're the only one doing anything around the house.
Well, fair.
But I could
Yeah.
hear in that moment, she's telling me that I don't do anything. But that's not what she's saying. What she's saying is, I'm overwhelmed. I feel like everybody's expecting me to do everything right now. And at the end of it, she's really asking in that statement is, could somebody help? And,
But from the female perspective too, to learn, you're being kind, but to say, rather than saying what he quoted, just say, hey, is there any way I can get a little help around the kitchen? What I've learned over, I guess, 25 years now is that if I'm frantically running around and doing all the things and he comes and sits down on the couch and turns on the TV, he's not just actively sitting there thinking, oh, I'm just going to sit and do nothing while she does everything. And I'm just going to sock it to her because, she just needs to do this and realize and put your guard down. Like he's had a long day too. And so for him to sit on the couch, it's nothing against me. So if I were just to ask instead of, being snarky or, have a sharp remark and just say, hey, babe, do you mind if you come tend to this on the stove? That would really help me out. So both communications needs to improve on both sides. And it's just learning over time that not take everything so personally in every aspect of the communication.
I think it's important. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we just have to recognize that we're different. Like we don't think the same. We don't see the same things. We don't process the same way. Just like we can't expect our kids to process husband and wife don't think the same way either. When I was in seminary and me and Lauren were in a church in Grapevine, our small group went through this study called
Men are like waffles, women are like spaghetti.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. It wasn't great, but the reality of the premise is that a woman's brain is so controlled emotionally that everything is intertwined. So Lauren can be, she's a physical therapist. She can be working with a patient and giving complete attention to that patient while she's making a grocery list in her head and thinking about who needs to be picked up where and who needs to go when and what we need to do at the house and who's going to clean up and is the garage door shut, and men tend to be more compartmentalized in their thinking in the sense
That's
of
right.
we get in a box, and it's like, it's not that I don't think about my family or I don't care about them when I'm at work. I'm just generally thinking about work. But it's the same thing whenever I come home and sit down in front of the TV. It's not that I don't care about what Lauren's doing. I'm just thinking about the TV. I'm thinking about the game, or I'm thinking about whatever. And it's not that I don't want to help. I just haven't even processed that was an option. And that, which is something that, I think as guys, we've got to grow up and realize that maybe I need to attend to some other things and ask some questions before I go get into my box. But
yeah.
but
Well, that's what I love what Carolyn May said. She said, miscommunication or non-communication forces us to try to read each other's minds. Many of our disagreements can stem from expecting each other to know how we feel or to know what we need without voicing it. And I think that's critical. And one of the things, Justin, the scripture says, it says to a husband, live with your wife in an understanding way. And what he's saying is that you need to know your wife, what makes her tick, what's her body language look like when she's frustrated. Like, Adrian can look at my face at times and know it's not been a good day. She's really good at reading me. And what I think what he's saying is that live with your wife in a way, in other words, like read her, study her, and so one of the things I say in premarital counseling when I meet with couples is, look, you need to read your wife and study your wife and kind of treat her like a book that you're trying to glean as much information from. And then I tell her, and you need to try to be a biography, or autobiography, and not a mystery novel.
Yeah.
Like if you want him to read you, don't be a mystery novel. Be like, tell him what you're thinking. And I think that's important that there's that kind of communication. But I love what Carolyn says there. That's really good. Say what you're feeling. Don't expect your spouse to know. And then we're not going to get it right. And so when we don't, let's not take offense too easy. And let's talk about this for a minute, because I know we've dealt with couples, through the years. You guys have dealt with couples through the years. It's amazing to me how oftentimes when it gets to the crisis mode, whatever the thing is that got them to the crisis isn't even that big of a deal. But it's 100 little things where it's now bitterness and resentment and unforgiveness. So what would you be advice, Lauren, when it comes to just forgiveness and not holding on to things,
Yeah. I love the verse, see to it that no root of bitterness creeps in, and in doing so, defiles you. And that's what bitterness can do. It can defile, it can poison our mind. And so, when you say that you have forgiven somebody, forgiveness looks like not bringing it back up. Like that instance should never enter into another conversation. I think we call that gunny sacking when we were going through premarital counseling. It's like you're holding like this burlap sack of all the offenses, and that's not what marriage is. Marriage, in love and forgiveness, you're not, keeping that record of wrongdoing. You're not saving that up for the next fight to throw it back in their face. True forgiveness is, like Jesus offers it, as far as the east is from the west, so far have your sins been removed from you. And again, marriage is supposed to be a picture of the gospel. And like you've said during this series, it's no surprise that we married a sinner. And just like Jesus loves us, even in the midst of our sins, we're called to love our spouse in the midst of their sin, and then reciprocating, they're called to love us in the midst of our own sin. And vulnerability begets vulnerability. And so when we're vulnerable with our spouse, they're going to be vulnerable with us too. And it's it can be a beautiful cycle of love and forgiveness. When you're giving it, then you're going to be receiving it.
That's right.
But when you're stingy with love and when you're stingy with forgiveness, then all of a sudden when it comes back around, you want to be treated differently. So I think that's important too.
Yeah, I think,
That's
I think
good.
whenever I'm meeting with couples and there seems to be a struggle with that, struggle with moving on or not continuing to bring up the past, it is what Lauren's talking about. It's like they've got this sack of like wrongs that I get to use anytime I need to, but I need to hold those because I really don't believe I'm going to be cared for well. And because I don't believe I'm going to be cared for well, I need to use these to protect myself.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, that's not being one. That's not being one flesh. That is saying we're always going to be divided, and I got to take care of number one, which is me.
Mhm.
And I would just speak that to couples, if that's you. You guys need to talk to somebody. You need to talk to your pastor. You need to talk to a counselor. You need to come share. You need to share that with a healthy couple that you know that can say, "Hey, wait a minute, let's help you walk through this so that you don't continue believing this lie that
Yeah.
controls you."
Yeah, and a lot of that, what we've learned, because we've done counseling, like we've been to counseling. One of the things we did on sabbatical is that I started going to a counselor just to process, life and ministry, and because it can take a toll on every part of my life.
Yeah.
And then we went to counseling, and people say, like, even when we were talking about that with some people, they were like, "Well, why did you go to counseling?" It's like, "Is there a problem?" I'm like, do you only go to the doctor when you got a problem? Like, I do a lot of checkups with the doctor, a couple of times a year. But anyway, so one of the things that we recognized in counseling this summer is how much of the stress and strife that sometimes can be created with one another is a lot of unprocessed past trauma.
Yeah.
Things in your childhood, issues that you've dealt with in the past that have created, um, responses in your central nervous system that then gets applied or misapplied rather, into the relationships that are closest to you, which for us is each other. And so it was like the most liberating thing ever to be able to recognize and to face some of those experiences, and extend forgiveness, to past hurts, to be able to acknowledge that, hey, that was wrong, but God's bigger than this. And it has literally changed even, our interaction with one another, for that. So that's the other thing I would just echo to couples out there. If you're having this high level of distrust, or there's this, if you're honest and you see that there's behaviors of the lack of forgiveness, there could be some serious trauma or things in the past that just needs to be resolved to get you to a place where you can trust. Love what somebody said on here. Yeah, Stephen and Lois Collins are on. They said this: we have to remember that we are on the same team. I remember with my seventh grade year in basketball, there was a guy. I'm not going to say his name in case he's watching, but not super smart. Anyway, we were on the same team, and he blocked my shot 4 times in a row. You see that there's.
Sorry.
I
I was like, where are you seeing these comments? I was looking at Facebook
Yeah.
when you came on with volume.
Yeah. So anyway, he blocked my shot like 4 straight times and was celebrating his blocked shots. And the coach grabbed him and was like, "He's on your team. You're wearing the same uniform." And I wonder sometimes, you feel like at times that, we got to remember we're on the same team. You're blocking shots and celebrating, but you're blocking the shots of your teammate. And a lot of times we take pride in, man, this is how I responded, or this is how I reacted. And man, you're blocking the shot of your spouse, and you're not going to win like that.
Yeah, that's so
so
good. And, we have a common enemy, and that's Satan. And, this whole series is important because I think one of his chief motives of operation is to attack the nuclear Christian family. And so if we can recognize, that we're a team, we're fighting a common enemy, we can call him out. We can use him as a scapegoat, even like Justin said, hey, when you said this, Satan is twisting it, and I'm hearing this. And, that's going to give you some, that's going to strengthen you to know that you're fighting, not against each other, but you're fighting together against a common enemy.
that's right. Oh, that's so good.
And something I was thinking about too is, I believe fully in counseling and think it's wonderful. And when we went this past summer, it was truly one of the highlights of our whole entire marriage. And it brought even deeper intimacy with us. And it was so, so wonderful for us. But, as a couple that is maybe been through a lot and learned a lot, and if you're in a healthy place, you should be the ones that are seeking out younger kids that are newly married or that are maybe in a season of hardship in their marriage and pouring into them. I think sometimes we think, oh, only counselors can be the one counseling, but that is absolutely false. As a disciple and as a married disciple who is trying to pour it, you should be pouring into others, and so I just know that, our kids, that are on the road to marriage have incredible life group leaders that are pouring into them like crazy. And we are forever grateful for them because
Yeah.
they have these solid marriages and they are just dripping in marital wisdom to these young kids. And so if you're a couple and you find yourself like, hey, we're in a good season, then you better be pouring into somebody else who might not be, because that can be your, ministry is trying to drip that into another couple that might be struggling. And so to meet at a kitchen table and have dinner, we're so, do that all the time. But what if you had for 30 minutes a conversation just about marriage and just
Yeah.
about, how are you doing in this area? This is things that we've learned over time, and just pouring in that way. So I just don't think, counseling is important, but on top of that, another layer.
No, I think this is good. One of the things, Justin, that we've tried to model is we make sure that, like, our disagreements that we have, Adrian always honors me in public in front of the kids. She honors me regardless, but in front of the kids, I mean, she really tries to respect, the role that God's given me, and I try to respect the role that God's given her. But one of the things that we haven't done, and I'm glad we haven't, is we don't hide our kids from our disagreements from the standpoint of, like, they need to know that it's not uncommon for there to be disagreements. Like when I talk to kids that are like, man, I don't know what to do in my marriage because my wife and I are fighting and I never saw my parents fight, which means they're like, my parents never fought. I was like, yeah, they did. You just didn't see it. And so because of that, they never were able to understand how to resolve conflict because they didn't see it modeled.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we've done, and I think it's important that parents do, is it's okay to model what it looks like to go, hey, I disagree with that. Let's kind of talk through that and then talk to one another rather than at one another to get to a place of agreement. And then your kids get to see it modeled that, okay, this is how marriage works.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, and I know I've even had conversations with McKenna specifically, she's the oldest, but she would see, oh, we were frustrated, we had a disagreement, she might have gone to bed, we resolved it. So the next morning, I'm going to have a conversation with her and just say, hey, this is what, Dad and I talked about, and walked her through how we did resolve the argument, and to say, be honest, like, you're going to fight with your spouse. You're going to disagree. So don't paint this picture of marriage like it's all sunshine and roses, because then they're going to freak out the first time they have a disagreement. But give them a healthy view and then walk them through, because you've got, like you talked about, Justin, those open lines of communication. She is like a sponge wanting to hear, how did you and Dad resolve that? Because that was a tough one, and then to be able to walk your kids through that, like, conflict resolution and what it can look like.
yeah, it's good.
I think with everything that y'all have just said about this topic, it reminds me of a verse I quote all the time in counseling, or just in day-to-day life. But it's Hebrews 3:13, and it says that we need to encourage one another day after day, as long as it's still called today, so that, or for this reason, that our hearts are not hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. And
That's
so
good.
here's Justin's from Mississippi, so y'all have to excuse Justin's redneck translation of this, but we got to encourage people around us, whether that's in our family, couples around us, younger people that we can disciple, all the time while we've got time, so we don't buy into things that aren't true, that then begins to control how we think, how we feel, and ultimately how we function.
Mm,
That's the enemy's tool.
yeah.
When Jesus talks about our enemy, he says that he's a liar, that he's the father of
Mhm.
lies, that whenever he speaks, he's speaking his native language. Guess what he's doing? To destroy
Mhm.
you, to seek
Yep.
and devour you. He is sowing seeds of distruth that your flesh, your sinful flesh, appreciate and love and want. And then the world celebrates it. And the
Yep.
world's like, yeah, you do you, go, and it's like, oh my gosh, that trifecta of the enemies just trying to destroy us is so strong. So how do we overcome it?
Yeah.
We need to be pouring encouragement into one another's lives, not just me and Lauren, although that has to happen, and not just me to my children, but me to other couples, me to
That's
other
right.
men, and Lauren to other women and other couples, like there comes a place where we weren't created to just be married and that being a vacuum.
Yeah.
We were created to be, our marriage was created to be a picture of the gospel for God's glory, not just for our satisfaction and happiness. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we forget that we become all just about ourselves and what we're doing, that we forget that no, God has a purpose for this. And
Yeah.
it's bigger than just procreation, and it's bigger than just, you know, us enjoying time together. It's his glory being spread to the ends of the earth.
Yeah.
That's why humanity was created in the first place. And Jesus seconded that call in the Great Commission,
That's
that we're
good.
to go to the ends of the earth. I mean, there's that reality that without encouragement for one another, man, we're leaving people floundering.
That's good. No, and I think that's it. We more time we can spend around dinner tables with our family, having conversation about real life, the more we model, that, and the more we can foster conversations where we can encourage those around us. But what Adrian said is so important, is investing in other couples investing
Yes.
in us. So I had a young man ask me last night, he's in a relationship, and he was at a college, and he's like, hey, I'm in a dating relationship, and some things got out of line. We're realigning it. What do you recommend? And I was like, man, you need to find a guy that's about 7 steps ahead of you. She needs to find a girl about 7 steps ahead of her, and you need to walk with them. And he said, together or separately? I was like, yes. Like, yes.
All the
Yeah,
above.
both.
D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Chris Dunn, I love this acknowledgement. He says, I love fixing things. I've had a hard time listening to his wife, and I want to fix everything for her. I would know nothing about that, babe. And he says, what's some advice to just listen to your spouse? Well, the thing that I thought of, Chris, whenever I read this was, y'all know that commercial? Well, there was it was on social media, and it was a guy sitting on the couch with his wife.
The magic table.
No, she was going, my head just, I don't know. No, she was saying there's this thing, and it hurts, and like, I can't quite put my finger on it. And she's doing this, and the camera's off to the side, and he's like, well, and every time he would go, and she would go, could you just listen? And he's like, yeah, and she goes, you never listen. And she's like, there's just this thing, and I don't know how. And he's like, okay, I'm trying to listen. And then it pans over, and she's got a nail that's been driven in her head. And he's like, but if you'll just let me pull the nail. She's like, why do you always try to fix things? And I was like, literally, that is our marriage in a nutshell there. So,
One of the things that this Chris, he is the master of fixing things. So he
Yes,
can,
for sure.
I think he can fix anything on the planet. Whenever I was counseling teens and their parents, every single day, one of the things that became really apparent is that what you're really good at, vocationally, if you bring that home and begin to treat people in your home that way, they're going to hate you.
Mhm.
So like I'm a counselor by trade. If I come in and have to, dig into the backdrop of every single detail of my kids' lives, they're just like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to be mad. Can I be mad today? Like, can I just be
Yeah.
frustrated? It doesn't have to be about somebody's backstory. Like, can I, and so there comes a place that what we're really good at vocationally, sometimes we have to almost just, I get in my car and it's like, I've just got to remind myself, you know what? I'm not a counselor. I'm a husband and father now.
That's good.
And I've got to move towards my kids, towards my wife in that way. Because if I don't, man, I'm going to push everybody away because all they're going to feel like is they're a problem that I've got to try to manage or help them understand and process.
That's
And
good.
I don't want my family to feel that way. And so for Chris, I would just encourage him to practice that, to when he gets in his truck and he's headed home, to just think about like, all right, I'm now a dad. I'm now a husband. And my role isn't to fix, my role is to care. Like Chris, I would just encourage you to just think about, visualize, what would it look like for me to hold Ceresa's heart well? Like, how do I
That's
just
good.
carry it and just say, man, my only job whenever I get home in relationship to you is just to hold your heart well. Like, how do I do that? And if that means I just need to ask questions, then I'm going to learn how to ask questions.
Yeah.
But I don't need to fix it because, I mean, we both know that Ceresa's a grown woman and she'll whip your tail if you keep trying to fix things.
So Lauren, what would you say? Because guys, I mean, this is probably a struggle for guys, maybe more because we're not as oftentimes feelers, we're fixers. And not to say that women aren't fixers, but oftentimes just need to talk through their frustration. What advice would you give to guys out there from a woman's perspective?
I mean, we could honestly start, the sentence with, I don't need you to fix this. I just need you to listen, or say what we need to say and then explain what you're feeling about it.
Man, me being able to hear from my wife what she wants me to do with the information is a game changer.
Oh, for sure.
It's like, oh, okay, like I might be chomping at the bit, but at the same time, it's like, okay, yeah, okay, tell me more.
I'll say, hey, I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm trying to figure out these logistics, and talking through it, helps.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I might, or he might even jump in and say, oh, I can do this piece of that puzzle, and then
Mhm.
problem solved. Sometimes I do want, him to step in and help, but like Chris is saying, yeah, a lot of times we just need them to say, I'm sorry, that sounds really tough. That's a
Yeah.
perfectly fine answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Just identify with that.
I think for us, it's just like you said, like, I don't need you to fix this, or, being able to talk about it. And then I will say, okay, what would you do in that situation?
Mhm.
Or, because there are times where I do know he's a fixer, and a lot of times it's really helpful, so to put, I think for the female, a lot of times is to swallow your pride and say, I do need help with this, I do need you to fix this. Or, it's funny when I'm, frustrated about something and sharing it, he is biting his lip, because I know in his heart he wants to say something and he wants to tell me how to fix it so bad, but I can literally see him holding it back while I'm talking, and he's doing what you said, Justin, just, yes, tell me more, tell me more. And then, like, as soon as I say, okay, now what would you do? Then it's like, whoa, and I get the answer. But it's just getting those feelings
Yeah.
off your chest, and then opening the door to say, hey, what would you do in that situation? And then receiving that as the wife. So it can be helpful.
Yeah. And I think what I'm learning, because I am, my mind automatically goes to systems and problem solving, right? So what I've had to learn with Adrian, this is more recent,
Mhm.
honestly, where I've gotten better at this, but asking the question, are you processing right now? Or do you want me to speak into this? And there are times where she'll say, I'm just frustrated. I'm just frustrated. I'm like, okay, I'd be frustrated too. And the moment I say, I'd be frustrated too, it's almost like she's like, okay, help me fix it, because what I think what a lot of times you're wanting in that is, one, to process what you're feeling, two, for someone to sympathize or empathize with that feeling. And once that connection's made, one of the things I do appreciate about Adrian, I would encourage wives to do this, is that once she gets it off her chest, she will invite me into helping her solve it, which then as a husband, that makes me feel valued, because now I can be a part of that. And it deepens our intimacy of me being a part of fixing and helping, and, and it also builds trust whenever, you let me speak in to those things. This is really good. Now, one thing, Justin, I want to say, and then we're going to cover two more questions, and I think we're going to be done for the night. You are actually building right now, because I saw what Emily put on here. Of course, Emily and Axel, we love you guys. You guys are such a gift to our church. But we are actually preparing a whole ministry, equipping families to disciple families. Because Justin, you said to me 6 or 7 years ago, 90% of the counseling you do for couples isn't counseling, it's discipleship.
Yeah.
And so and this is something you dreamed about years ago with me, of building a ministry where you can equip families to walk alongside other families who may be 4 or 5 steps behind them. Give us a 30, 45-second snapshot of what's coming at New Beginnings.
Oh man, I wish I knew. I when we started this biblical counseling training course system, whatever we're going to call it, I was praying really whenever I finally bit the bullet, okay, I'm gonna run after this. Quit being afraid of failure, Justin, and run after it. I began praying for maybe 10 people to sign up. And so maybe 5 people would do it, and then God, if you can't get 10, will you just please give me enough of my friends to feel bad enough for me that they'll sign up and do it, And it's just like, ye of little faith. And we have 75 people going through our biblical counseling class. It's an 8-month course where people learn to disciple people. I mean, that's really what it is. And so the desire is to have a lay counseling ministry at our church where we can meet with individuals, but we also have some of them that are couples that could meet with couples and families, where this is a ministry that we get to provide to our church. My prayer is that every year we just keep adding more people who are trained to care for people where they live, work, and play. And
That's good.
some of our people won't counsel families in our church, but man, they're going to counsel a family that they work with,
Yeah.
and they're going to counsel the neighbor down the street, or they're going to know how to ask the next question at the ball field, or whatever. And so I'm fired up about it, and I'm so grateful to those who are participating right now. I mean, I sent out one email asking people, and we have a ton. I mean, it's more than I could ever have imagined, and I'm so grateful that God didn't answer my prayer to just give me 10. He just did abundantly, exceedingly, and abundantly more than I could have ever asked to imagine with it. And I'm fired up because, man, I see people in the class, they're studying, they're excited, they're sharing, they're telling me the things that they're learning. And as we meet together, it's overwhelmingly encouraging.
Yeah.
So I cannot wait. I cannot wait until, next summer where our people are trained and we can begin to see, hey, what does this look like in the lives of those around us?
Yeah.
Whether
So
that's
one of the
families
things,
or individuals
yeah.
or,
So just so everybody knows, we're in the training ground of that right now. Justin's walking several families through being trained for this. It's going to be, it's family counseling, but it's a discipleship program where, and so I would say to couples out there who say, hey, at some point, I would love to have another couple pouring into our marriage. And one of the things that we say regularly is that counseling isn't just for crisis. Having another couple pouring into your marriage is a good thing. And so next summer we'll have all the training done, and that's going to be available. So let us know if you are a couple who is looking for another couple to pour into you strategically, helping you be strengthened. Let me recommend a couple of things to us real quick. We were talking about past trauma and dealing with pain of the past. There's a book, Your Body Keeps the Score. That is a really good book. There's another one called The Way We Love. That's a book that Adrian and I went through this summer that helped us understand how our central nervous system has been shaped by experiences of our childhood that then can create rhythms of how we respond to different situations within relationships. And so The Way We Love is another book that I recommend for that. When it comes to, there's a question a little bit ago about if there's someone was abused in the past, maybe as a child. And the way I understood the question is it may be affecting future relationships within marriage, maybe don't feel safe sexually. One of the things that I would say is that, first of all, if there's someone who's been through past trauma like this, first, my heart breaks for that. And that I would encourage you, if you haven't been able to have someone step in and be an advocate for you, that you would do that. You would come to one of our pastors or counselors at the church and take steps toward healing, but also in someone being an advocate to walk with you, processing that pain and helping you take steps, toward the Lord bringing healing to that. Because a lot of times within our marriage, that those type of experiences and trauma can really create barriers that are understandable. And but there is healing on the other side of that. Justin, what would you say to someone who's walking as a victor after abuse and wanting to find more healing?
You can start.
No, you start.
Okay. I would echo what you said, Pastor, that my heart's breaking for you. Um, that's probably why I do what I do. It's just like, man, I want to fight for you, with you. Um, here's what I would say is, while books are really good, and you know, they all have their shortcomings. It's certain books will reach one person and it not reach the next because we're just different. Um, but I would tell you, more than a book will ever help you, a conversation will. And
Mhm.
and spend time talking to people. Bring things into the light that's been hidden. You are not what has happened to you. You're a child of God, dearly
That's so good.
loved. And I think that the more that we realize that as believers, it's like Jesus, whenever he's baptized, and the God says, "This is my beloved Son with whom I'm well pleased." Then the transfiguration, when you know Jesus is there, what does God say? "This is my beloved Son with whom I'm well pleased." Now, y'all listen to him. Do what he says. All right. What's he doing? One of them, he hasn't started ministry yet. No water to wine, no dead people raised, deaf, hearing or mute speaking, or none of these things that have happened yet. And man, God saying, man, you're mine, and I love you, and I'm proud of you.
That's good.
And as God's child, that's what he's saying to you,
That's so
that I
good.
love you, I choose you, I'm so proud to be your dad, your father in heaven. And I think sometimes we've got to recognize, even though abuse wants to rob us of our innate identity, your identity is not whatever happened to you. Your identity is that you are now a child. You have been adopted as a son and a daughter, and you are dearly loved. That when
That's
God
so good.
looks at you, he looks at you with a beaming smile, excited that you are his. And I think the more that we can begin to view God that way, and we can recognize our identity is there, it does allow us to move forward. Now what? Um, but man, that's my greatest encouragement would be,
That's good.
have some conversations, recognize that you are not your past. You're not
That's
a
good.
product of your past. You're a child.
And, just pray. And this kind of goes for anybody that's struggling with intimacy within marriage, whether that's because of past abuse or just feeling distant. Pray about it. Pray individually, pray as a couple together. Pray for God to give you a desire for your spouse. God wants us to enjoy sexual intimacy within marriage. So when we pray for that, when we ask him to help us with that, we can be confident that he's going to answer that with a yes, because that's part of his design.
Yeah, it's good.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Um, and to shift gears just a little bit, one question that we didn't get a chance to answer, I'm just going to throw an answer for this about cell phones of your kids in their bedrooms. I think it's a bad idea. I think it's a good, like Justin talked about, their kids' phones shut off at a certain time. That protects them from temptation, protects the enemy from, keeps the enemy from getting into places where they're alone with their phone. We're big, like when our kids, especially when they were really younger, you know, uh, phones stayed downstairs when they went to bed, even including their friends when their friends were over. Your phones stay downstairs. We're not going to go upstairs and take phones. So for us, we don't have televisions in our kids' rooms, never did. So just or computers. And so I think that's a good practice. Again, I'm not going to say that every family has to practice that. I just think it's wisdom to protect unguarded time with devices that could lead them toward sin. And the enemy wants them to be isolated with that machine. He wants that because that's when he can creep in and get a stronghold. Hey, listen, thank you guys for joining us tonight. And Justin and Lauren, you guys are such a gift to our church. We're so grateful for you and your family. The examples that you both set, Justin, the encouragement you are to me personally as a friend and as a pastor. And then Lauren, the way that you shepherd and love the ladies of our church, you are just such a gift. So thank you for your wisdom tonight. Guys, we love you. One of the things that we're going to be doing this Sunday night is we've got Vision Night. It is going to be incredible. Encourage you at 5 p.m. Sunday night. We're going to be talking about where we're going over the next 2 years. Encourage you to come be a part of that. God's got huge things in store for us. I believe every single one of you, he has a part to play in that. And we want to encourage you to come be a part of that. And what we're doing on Sunday night is we're gearing up for a new sermon series that's starting on October 19th. And if you want to know more about that sermon series that's coming, and I believe it's going to change the future of our church, then you have to come Sunday night on October 12th and to be a part of a vision night. So, hey, listen, I love you. Share this information with others, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night at the prayer. Love you guys.